the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.
Hello, and welcome to AV CrossTalk on AV Nation. My name is McGinnis, and I'll be your host and moderator for the inaugural episode of AV CrossTalk, the show I'm sure many of you have been waiting for. If you're a regular here on AV Nation, you already know it's home to some of the best and brightest minds in the audiovisual industry, many of whom have very strong opinions. Well, strong opinions is exactly what AV CrossTalk is all about. This is not a talk show. This is a debate, a public forum for some of the most opinionated folks in our industry to go head-to-head, face-to-face on some of the hottest, most pressing issues facing AV today. And when it's over, you even get to pick the winner by voting on Twitter using the hashtag AVCrosstalk. Before we begin, our producer, George Tucker, and the AV Nation legal department want 2 points made perfectly clear. First and foremost, all opinions of the participants are their own and not necessarily those of their employers, any affiliated trade organizations, avnation.tv, or its sponsors. And second, please remember that this is a debate presented here for your education and enjoyment. Any positions advocated or defended may not necessarily be, in whole or in part, those of the participants. So finally, this is AV CrossTalk. The escalating AV and is Betty begins. Tonight's contestants are two of the industry's best known and most opinionated bloggers and pundits. For the affirmative is Mark Coxon, who ignited much of this debate on Twitter earlier this year by comparing Infocom's 10,000 CTS certification with the million or more already certified by Cisco. Mark is a 13-year veteran of both the IT and AV industries, a prolific member of the Rave blog squad, and with more than 900 followers and 5,000 tweets under his AV Phenom belt, a guy who's not shy to express his opinions. A resident of Southern California and regional sales manager for a prominent Midwestern mount, rack, and screen manufacturer, Mark will be speaking first. For the opposition, or in this case defending the future of the AV industry, is Josh Srago, engineering manager for a San Francisco Bay Area integrator and a self-confessed giant nerd with 15 very diverse years of pro audio and AV experience. Josh is a frequent contributor to Infocom's All Voices blog, as well as on his own site, soundreason.org, which I recommend highly. So, gentlemen, here are the rules. No kicking, no slapping, no biting, and no words that George may be forced to edit out later. Audience, here's the format. Mark will speak first and has 3 minutes to state his case for the affirmative. Josh then has 3 minutes to counter for the opposition, and then the real fireworks can begin. Mark, the formal proposition is distributed prior to the show. With the convergence of AV and IT well underway, both technically and commercially, it is inevitable that the much smaller and less mature AV industry will ultimately be absorbed into IT and simply become a subset of the skills, services, software, and equipment already offered by the IT industry. What say you to support this?
Well, thanks, Brock. Josh, it's nice to see you. Brock, it's nice to see you as well. And George and AV Nation, thanks for having us to host this. I'm going to say that I don't think it's any secret that in audio video, we've been undergoing a transition for the last several years where our comfort zone of high margins on protected lines has started to disappear. We've seen commoditization of devices, including our touch panels and those pieces in our market. And we've seen a shift, a needed shift, at least in the mindset of some larger companies and other integrators that we need to start tailoring our businesses to be a service-based business of the future. I think that we've been a little complacent in that change, and that as long as we had some margin in the product, we haven't really turned our businesses in that direction, mostly because we feel that we're competing against our counterparts who are also a little behind in making that transition. I think the problem with that is that we have a peripheral industry, being IT, that is sitting and waiting, and as things start to converge and our I guess traditional proprietary appliances become endpoints on a network, become PC-based devices or mobile-based devices that just need to be provisioned with a MAC address, that now those companies have a leg up to get in. And now we're not competing with people who are used to high margins and have a hard time running a service-based business for revenue, but we're competing against people who have successfully done that model for years. And with that, I think that increased competition is something that is very dangerous and something that if we're not ready for is going to have us playing second fiddle to IT companies.
That's great, Mark. Josh, what do you have to say about the future of the AV industry? Are we going to be swallowed whole?
I would have to say that the future of the AV industry is bright. I would even say brilliant at this point. There's no debating the fact that as the AV industry continues to mature, as we move throughout the 2000s, that convergence is happening. We are moving more of our signals onto these network devices. We are becoming these endpoints that Mark referred to. There's no debating that. That is just the way that things are transitioning. That is just the way that we have to observe this. However, that doesn't mean IT has any interest in taking us over. That doesn't mean that we're going to become a part of their industry. Weak group of individuals with a unique skill set. We are a Liam Neeson in the tech industry. We have this set of skills that other people can't necessarily provide. And they're secret. And when it boils down to it, you think about it in terms of how many times do we in this industry get phone calls from relatives, from family members, oh, hey, my TV isn't quite working right, or hey, this isn't working right. They don't call an IT guy for that. They call the AV guy. They call the person who has an understanding of what speakers do. They have an understanding of what their home appliances need to do. Because we have this unique skill set, we're able to separate ourselves out from the IT world, and we become that aren't converging, but are working on a parallel path to provide solutions to their customers. They're providing one type of solution that is based on information technology, providing a solution that is information on that network. And because we're working in this parallel path, I don't see AV ever being swallowed up because we provide something he doesn't understand.
What about Mark's point, Josh, that we're not ready to compete? You know that we already have, you're an integrator, I'm an integrator, we already have a lot of IT companies that are competing with us. They are in our space. They are equipping simple meeting rooms, they are selling video conferencing systems, and they are selling them on a very different business model than our businesses have been accustomed to living on. I think that Mark made a phenomenal point when he said, we're not ready to compete.
Mark saying we're not ready to compete is examining two different business models and the way that they operate. In terms of the IT business model, an infrastructure and then expanding out from it, yeah, that's a completely different way of managing it. Whereas the AV has sort of always been that afterthought, and we do have to change our mentality. However, here's the thing. You talk about these IT companies providing a video conferencing solution. That's being very generous by saying that they're providing a conferencing solution. What they're providing isn't going to bring the same quality of the equipment that we have available to us. What they're providing is only a fraction of what it is that we do. As video conferencing, while being important in the corporate environment, is still only a small part of AV in and of itself. I mean, more and more we see the Infocom has addressed this continuously over the last few years, giving a specific pavilion at the Infocom show every year now to this technology. But how big is that pavilion in comparison to, say, the control systems, the audio solutions, or just normal video solutions? It's still small in comparison to those. So when you look at that, it is the emerging part. It is the bright and shiny aspect of our industry right now that's drawing a lot of people in, but it's still only a small part. So if we're going to say that IT is going to take over video conferencing, that's a different conversation than IT is going to take over AV.
Mark, Josh has brought up unique skill sets, and he's brought up the concept of quality. Do you think that either one of these are defensible points that could save the AV industry?
I think what we're dealing with here, Brock, is something very specific. And this is number one, that couple points that Josh made. Number one, when our relatives have problems with AV, who do they call? They call us. Why? Because they have a relationship with us. There's an existing relationship between us and them, number one, right? So when these companies that have relationships with IT companies who are trusting an IT company with their network, with provisioning, with managing traffic across a network, which video traffic can be a huge burden on a switch, who are they going to call for that advice? Are they going to call a traditional AV industry? Coming back to Josh's other thought, AV is typically been an afterthought in these jobs. There was a great article a few years ago, a whole insert in Structured Cable News that was interviews with architects, and 75% of them agreed AV was important, and 20% of them engaged an AV person before the end of the job. That's a big problem. And I guarantee you they're not waiting until the end of the job to worry about their ISP, to worry about their switch infrastructure, and to worry about how they're managing people's data and security on a network. And when that person who has the relationship sits across from them and tells them that what I'm going to do is going to be good for you, right? I'm going to put in a Polycom sound structure, and I'm going to put in a Chrome box, and I'm going to do these things to tune your room to some degree, right? And he has that comfort level, and it can explain to the guy how he's protecting his network. No amount of well-meaning but misplaced Sragonian logic on my part sitting across from the guy is going to convince him that I'm the better fit because I know how to tune the audio system better. It's not going to happen. We have to be able to speak the language of our audience, and we have to be able to speak to what keeps them up at night. And I guarantee you what keeps the IT manager up at night is HIPAA violations, is the HVAC contractor providing a back door like at Target for all the data from the credit cards get stolen, and not whether he gets some reverb when his CEO sits in the conference room. It's just not what he's concerned about.
Well, that happened to the point when the CEO can't be heard on the other end of the line, such as when Fortune 500 companies then make a phone call and say, so my IT guy failed me, what can you do to solve my problem? Point, exactly. Then we're the hero coming in.
And then we're the dog waiting by the chair for the scrap to fall. And
when that happens, you can wait by the chair for the scrap.
So we're sitting by we're waiting for the phone call.
That's your solution. If you choose to wait by the scraps, wait for the scraps to fall, that's on you. However, that doesn't mean that's the only methodology.
So Josh, what is the methodology? Mark makes an excellent point.
All right. So here we go. You're talking about the fact that there are architects not engaging the engineers, but who are they engaging? Are they engaging electricals? Guess what? AV is still part of the IBEW. We are an electrical union. We get engaged for IT because guess who's providing their structured cabling more often than not is the IBEW. So when they start putting that IT system together, engaging some form of electrical union worker in many cases to provide that. So for those of us that are a part of the union or those of us that wish to be a part of the union, we actually have in prior to that last-minute scrap table you're discussing. So yeah, the IT guy may be sitting across the table and saying, I know how I'm going to solve them. Now, the fact that you just said an IT guy can tune a room, I want to meet an IT guy that knows what tuning a room actually means. So if you can introduce that unicorn to me, or if you mark unicorn, fantastic. I've always wanted to see one. But
Gosh, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to jump in here because I think that for a lot of us sitting at the other end of the computer screen tonight, we would be far more terrified of being absorbed by IBEW than we would be about being absorbed by IT. There's I know that there are lots of electrical contractors who are also audiovisual contractors, and I know that there are good AV people who are IBEW members. But I have to think that that's a tiny fraction of the industry, and it actually takes us way off point.
But
I have to jump back
entirely.
into Schragian logic.
Shragonian. It's Shragonian.
Shragonian logic.
What I was saying was
the connection between them, which is the point that if there's somebody else that we are associated with, that we are working with, that is the project, dealing with the architect, dealing with those circumstances, we're not just sitting around waiting for scraps in these projects. That's kind of where this is all pushing towards. I maybe it's an example, but we're dealing with electricals. We're dealing with structural engineers. We need to make sure that they can support the equipment that we want to put in, which means that we're talking to people where the project is over. Now, that could be a consultant, that could be an integrator that's doing a design build, but that isn't at the end of the job. If they waited to the end of the job, how much extra money is it going to cost if you didn't have the foresight?
And Josh, that's just to be fair, I didn't throw out the scenario of the CEO calling you after the IT guy messed up the sound system. You did. And when I'm playing that scenario, I'm saying exactly what you're saying. We're coming at the end when the budget is done, after somebody has already won that job. And I guarantee you, if an IT company is making a play for video teleconferencing, they only let that bad phone call come in 1 or 2 times before they decide we're either going to hire someone who knows audio or we're going to get somebody trained on how to do this properly. Because we are selling things with a master services agreement, we are selling things with a managed services agreement with some type of SLA, and we do not want to lose our service contract because we don't know how to tune audio. That will be a phone call that happens once or twice. An AV company picks up the fix, and then they will learn how to fix that on their own. And then where are we? When they do know how to tune a room, or when they hire Josh, when they hire you at 30, 40, 50% more than what you're making now to be the person who helps them tune rooms, what happens down the line, right? That's where I'm going with that.
So, Mark, you're saying that at the IT world has 2 significant advantages. One is at the beginning of the beginning of the transaction, because they have an existing relationship and it's an everyday relationship rather than, unlike AV, which is a once in 3 years or once in 5 years relationship. And at the other end of the transaction, the IT industry has the smarts and the wherewithal to be able to buy any kind of expertise they need in order to keep their customer happy. Is that the argument?
Well, the argument is, it's exactly the argument, of course. They're not going to lose. The IT industry is based on, they make their money on service. When I worked for IBM Direct, if we made 3% on a PC, we were jumping up and down. We wanted IBM Global Services to have a service contract on those machines. That is where we made our money, right? And if we go in and we give away, they're the Gillette razor. I'm sorry, it's the Gillette razor mentality. If we give away the razor to sell the razor blades, we're not going to go give away the razor and then let the AV industry come back and sell them the razor blades because we don't know how to. We are going to figure that out if we don't know how to. And that's what's going to happen. They will hire or acquire that skill set.
So, Josh, if IT has some business advantages and they could hire the technical resources and skill sets that they need, what is our unique place then? Because our industry seems to revolve around skill sets and what Mark referred to in his opening as proprietary equipment. What in fact offering that is going to keep us independent of the large VARs, or for that matter, the distribution houses that are now offering great bundles of service along with their pallets of hardware?
A complete lack of desire. That is the primary. They don't want it. They don't care. And here's why. Working in Silicon Valley, we service some of the top IT in the world. Do you know how many people they have that are computer programmers that they employ? Hundreds of thousands, over 1 million at this point. How many of them can Vestron system, an AMX system, even an Extron system? How many of them can program BIAMP, Symmetrics, Media Matrix? How many of them care to do it? And it's a very, very minimal amount. Yes, if they really put an effort in, those few companies are going to go hire their own internal team to monitor what's going on. But those are the billions and billions of dollar companies that are going to hire a few people to make sure that what's working on site is working. That doesn't mean they're going to handle the advancement and the installation of new equipment and upgrades to what they're dealing with. So we're still the AV industry is still providing something that the IT guys aren't doing. Is our skill set, our audio, our video, our control. You keep going back to video conferencing. And when it comes back down to video conferencing, the simple answer when it comes to it with IT is we do have to be able to speak their language. We have to be able to explain to them what's required of us on a network and saying, this is what I'm going to do. Here's what the bandwidth is going to be. Do you want me to live on your network? Do you want me to live on a VPN? Do you want me to live someplace else on my own proprietary switch that you want nothing to do with? And it's up to them to determine. Now, in this modern age, because of the fact that everything is network-based, the IT guy does hold the key. He holds the key to security. He holds the key to getting onto that network, which brings up the question, what about things that don't go on the network? Not every product in AV goes on a network. What do they do then? Somebody to come in then, and for each individual case, they have to hire somebody new based on its skill set, whereas they have an entire industry of professionals who have been doing this for years, because that's how long this industry has realistically been around. 75 if you want to go all the way back to the origins of Infocom, and even farther back if you want to go back to when paging horns and foldback monitor and all the things that they did were invented. You know, you're talking decades of experience that the IT industry doesn't have in terms of how this technology that they don't use on an everyday basis, but we do. Who's got the time? How many people in this?
There is another one, Josh. No, I was going to actually support your point. There is another one that you're missing. IT people generally don't do field service. They don't make house calls.
There's that.
They don't hang things and rig things and terminate things other than with a little cruncher. And so is that part of the argument?
Well, the final point that I was about to reach was the idea that with an IT service versus an AV service, what you're looking at is two guys with completely different mentalities. On top of which, I talk about how many people you hear complain about how much they have to learn and try and keep up with everything in the AV industry. Now imagine that multiplied by 10 times, 20 times to keep the industry. So how are they going to be able to keep up with their industry and our industry simultaneously and still sleep, eat, breathe? I mean, there's a lot of things that have to happen. So yeah, it's the fact that we are people that are willing to go out and get our hands dirty, but because of the fact that it is a specialized set of things that we do, the industry doesn't understand them completely. They're starting to get that inkling of video conferencing because it's starting to live on their network, making it very easy for them. It's like, oh, it's this signal, it does this, we'll just make it go that way. But again, because of those specialized skills, how can you absorb an entire industry when you don't understand everything that industry does?
All right, we're getting close to the end of our first AV Crosstalk show. This has been an excellent debate, and it's gone in directions that I didn't expect that it would go. Mark is making a business case, and Josh is, at least as far as I can tell, making a toolkit case or a tool case. Mark, if you were to sum up what you've just heard, and Josh has been speaking for a while, how would you summarize your argument or attempt to convince the listeners that may want to be voting for you on Twitter, hashtag AV Crosstalk, that end up working for one of those companies?
Well, I would like to bring this back to one thing. Josh said, of course, we have to be having these conversations and be learning IT skill sets. And my question is to that: what happens if we don't? What happens if we don't? Josh's case is based on desire. They don't want to. Okay, what if they decide they do? Right? My question to everybody is this, right? We love to replay this underdog story, right? People love the Battle of Thermopylae, the movie 300, where 300 Spartans stand in the gap against 1,000,000 Persians, right? But the reason that the 300 Spartans were able to hold off that army is they were better trained and they knew the landscape. They knew the territory they were fighting in. Not the territory they came from, not the territory they fought in 10 years ago when they were doing RGBHV, but the territory they're fighting in today. And my question is, if we're the 300, are we the Spartans or are we the Persians against a 1,000,000-man Spartan army coming our way? And I think we really need to think about that if we want to have a bright future as an industry and not be absorbed by those folks.
That's a great argument, Mark, and certainly a great wake-up call for a lot of us out here who may, in fact, be sitting waiting for something to happen, and that waiting may end up being those crumbs that Josh has warned us about. Josh, how in a minute or two would you sum up, very specific kind of business case? Josh, have we lost you?
I'm still there. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So, in summation, Mark brings up again and again the quantities of certified, and because there are millions of Cisco certified, they've automatically won. Because, just because they have more, they're automatically better, right, Mark? That's the argument you're trying to make. Because there's more of them, they're better than us somehow. The AV industry has to change. It always has to change. We're always changing because technology changes. 20 years ago, we were starting to move into digital signals as a whole. Now we're starting to move even more into network technology. It happens. It's an evolution. Things have to change. Change in the AV industry right now is we have to embrace our role. We have to understand who it is that we're working with. Previously, we've had to explain it to facilities guys and technical guys and the structural guys. Now we get to explain it to IT guys. But we have always had to learn how to speak their language. The key is we still have to learn their language. It's all about communicating with our brethren as we build a project out. It isn't about being taken over. There's nothing, the fear that to instill that if you don't do something now, we're going to lose everything. No. We are just in a position where we have the advantage because we understand something does. And as soon as we learn how to communicate what our needs are to the rest of the people we're working with, we're going to be able to stand tall and push them right off that cliff.
That is a very reasonable argument and exactly what I would have expected from you, Josh. Thank you so much. This has been an absolutely amazing half an hour. I am pleased to have been able to be part of the very first AV Crosstalk on AV Nation. Thank you to Josh Srago and Mark Coxon, as well as, of course, our producer, George Tucker, who's been doing a fantastic job in the know what other magic you've been doing back there, George, but I imagine this thing is working. For all of the listeners, we have an opportunity on Twitter right now for you to vote. Is IT going to win the battle? Is AV going to survive? And I think that that's the the fair conclusion. It's not about AV winning a battle. It's about whether IT is going to subsume and consume us, or whether AV is going to continue to be the vibrant and vital and contributing industry that it is today. On Twitter, hashtag AV CrossTalk. Please let us know what you think. This is a wrap for the first ever AV CrossTalk on AV Nation. I'm Brock McGinnis. Good night and thank you very much.
Thanks, Brock.